Hello, I'm Father Louis Scurdy with Friends of the Word, the Weekday Word. Today we're continuing our interview with Monsignor Louis Beer. Louis, at his last interview, indicated that he was an alcoholic, and he gave us a little history of his affiliation with Guest House and how he came to grips with the concept of the disease of alcoholism in his life. Welcome back, Louis.
Thank you. Thanks.
It's interesting because during the recess, you got talking to one of our crew members, and the word functioning alcoholic, the phrase functioning alcoholic came up. And I want to focus on that today. What is a functioning alcoholic?
Well, a functioning alcoholic is a person who, despite how much they drink, is usually able to get up the next morning and do whatever they have to do, and continue to be able to do that over a period of time. Whereas most people, I think, who think the alcoholic is the one stumbling, falling down drunk,
Right.
the bum on the street, with the paper bag, and it doesn't have to be. Someone can function very well.
In my counseling, I use a few phrases, and I said, you might have an alcohol problem if one of these happens to you when you drink, and there's several, but they're poetic and they're all Latin based. When you drink, do you drink until you become comatose, jocose, lachrymose, bellicose, morose? Do you drink until you become unconscious, comedian, sad, angry? And at the university, we used to call bellicose, we used to call beer muscles. So what happened when you drank?
Well, actually, I never knew what it was going to be like. Some days I would go out and be with the party and lots of fun and, loud, and sometimes just sit very quiet. Other times cry. No reason. No, I wouldn't know why sometimes. So I was never too sure what was going to happen. And to be honest, I know that now. Back then, I didn't even think about that.
Oh, that's interesting. So the phrases I use in counseling, of course, they came from my studies. I didn't create them, but they really are significant because different personalities experience alcohol, and it's a change. It's a chemical change in the body, isn't it?
Yep.
You asked me to use a reading from 1 Kings. This is about the prophet Elijah. Elijah had been summoned by God, and he was afraid to do the ministry that God sent him to do. This section is from chapter 20, verses 11 to 14. Then the Lord said, "Go outside and stand on the mountain before the Lord. The Lord will be passing by." A strong and heavy wind was rending the mountains and crushing the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire there was a tiny whispering sound. When he heard this, Elijah hid his face in his cloak and went and stood at the entrance of the cave. A voice said to him, "Elijah, why are you here?" He replied, "I have been most zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, but the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." Then the Lord said, "Go back to the road, to the desert near Damascus." The word of the Lord. Why that reading?
Well, the disease of alcoholism, besides being a physical disease, is also a spiritual disease. And so it's recommended that when people admit that they're alcoholic or drug addicts, that they need to find a higher power in their life. The recovery does not use the word God necessarily, but many people do.
Higher power they use across the board.
Across the board, right.
Okay.
Some power that's greater than themselves that can help them.
Right.
And many times, if that becomes an obstacle for people because they're looking for this higher power, this God, whatever they want to call it, or him or her, as lightning or as thunder or loud, and sometimes it's just a little tiny voice that's right next to him, sitting in a chair saying, "I'm an alcoholic. Maybe you are too."
Wow. Did you have that voice? I mean, who was the person who tapped you on the shoulder and said, "You might have a problem"?
Well, the first person was John Ryan, Father John Ryan, one of the priests in our diocese.
Was he at the parish you were served at?
No, he was he was known as the
Like a liaison
yeah,
for priests?
yeah,
Yes.
the drunk
Oh,
taker
oh,
of drugs for the
oh, oh,
diocese.
interesting. Oh, so he
Yeah,
was specifically commissioned to work
to
with.
work with priests that he heard may have had problems. Yeah, so he's the first one that really ever said to me, I heard this, and maybe you want to think about that.
Okay.
Um,
Non-judgmental,
Not at all.
just
Not at all.
opening up.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's an approach family members could use with their significant person.
Yeah, anybody, even I'm sure, even like you realize in your counseling and all, when it comes to deal with a person with an addiction, you really can't tell that person they have that addiction.
Mm,
You have to try to lead them to make that decision for themselves, because telling them is not going to work,
right.
unless they get committed themselves and all.
Right. Okay. That's significant. So this reading from Book of Kings reminds you of that little voice, and maybe that's something our audience has to know, that it doesn't have to be something profound, but maybe an interaction in the family, maybe a little voice, a behavior, and as we mentioned, that the various levels of alcoholism has an effect on the family, on the system of the family. And it's important for the addicted person, I think, just to open his or her eyes to the family. When the family has a problem with my drinking, the typical alcoholic would say, it's their problem, right? Have you had that experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. But many times people, in the midst of their alcoholism, say, I didn't hurt anybody but me, because I put the alcohol in. I'm the one that suffered physically, and all, not realizing how much you were hurting the people around them then. Not necessarily physically,
Right.
but mentally and emotionally, especially, if you're not there. If, you have kids, you're not there for the kids. I've heard thousands of people over the years going to meetings saying, "Oh, my kids grew up, I wasn't there." I didn't.
Right.
I didn't go to
Right.
the soccer game. I didn't go to the softball game
Because I was drinking.
because of the drinking. I didn't go to the parent. My wife took care of all of that, or my husband took care of all of that, and I
Right.
wasn't there for it.
Mention husband and wife. This is an equal opportunity disease.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Without names, what kind of people, what status of people have you met in the program? Do you still go to the meetings?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I still go to at least 4 or 5 a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that takes a chunk of time out of your schedule.
Mhm.
Well, guess
Yeah.
what? It's a chunk of time in your
In my
schedule.
schedule, right.
Because that's really important.
Yeah, I believe that, and I always believe that over the years. I've always gone to at least 3 or 4 meetings.
Great.
Now I have a little more time, so I go to a couple extra. But
Good.
yeah, I've met the Bowery Street Bum, doctors, lawyers, a number of other priests,
Yes.
psychologists, psychiatrists, drug counselors, alcohol counselors, who have relapsed. So
Right.
there's all the men, women, young people, older people.
Right. Okay. So you see, I mean, in your
It's
experience,
wide, yeah.
it's quite a variety. From the parish, you went to guest house, then you went back to the parish, and you shared this with all of your parishioners through the homily. What was the next level of your ministry after that?
I stayed there for 2 more years because they suggest I should have moved right away.
Good.
And then I was offered the opportunity of becoming the vicar for urban ministry for the diocese,
Oh,
which since I had served in the city all my life up
right,
to that point,
right.
was something that I was interested in. Never thought that I could do. So that was one of the gifts that I got from my recovery, to be able to do a job that I could do.
Previously, you mentioned that one of the issues you had was low self-esteem, and now you're describing an experience where you're being asked to do something that you're not used to doing, but you were open to it, which
Right.
I think shows a lot of self-esteem
Mhm.
and trust in yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Any particular prayer that you focus on?
The Serenity Prayer.
Why not share that with
God
us?
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Boy, that should be in all of our hearts, isn't it? It's so real in and not only addiction, any aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
The Serenity Prayer.
Right.
I'm interviewing Father Monsignor Louis Beer on the illness of alcoholism, and he's describing today some of the functioning aspects of a functioning alcoholic. And Louis is going to be back. From here, he moved on to another experience at ministry, and you're going to be very interested to see where he winds up as far as serving, using the information of alcoholism in your own life and helping others with it too.
Right.
This has been Father Louis Scurity with Monsignor Louis Beer. Thank you, Louis, for coming back,
Thank you.
and you'll be back at future shows. Thank you.